Here's Cam Robinson, the director of everything at Elite Prospects, who joins us from his home on the island. How are you?
I'm well. You guys got me hungry here. I could handle a little pizza dipper.
Mm-hmm. Always the case.
We're going to start with Gavin McKenna and his 8-point game because, well, it's an 8-point game. And now the conversation has suddenly changed about the erstwhile first overall pick in the 2026 draft from, I don't know, I think I prefer Stenberg, maybe even Verhoff, to, oh, yeah, he's number one with the bullet, and let's put him on the 2030 Canadian Olympic team. Your thoughts on Mr. McKenna and how he has flipped the script here in 2026 since the World Juniors?
Boy, it sure seems like he's played an entire season since the World Juniors have ended. Hey, it's been a roller coaster. What a performance. I mean, yeah, he was playing a team that's been fighting it a little bit this year, but that is still a Division I NCAA hockey team that he dropped 8 points on and then goes out and completes the comeback the night later with the OT winner, a gorgeous winner in overtime. So 10 points over that 2-game set has vaulted him right back up the NCAA leaderboard. I put this out there the other day too. I got a little something coming. Macklin Celebrini through 28 games in his draft year, 43 points. Gavin McKenna through 28 games, 43 points. It's a pretty nice company to keep there. Celebrini kept it cooking red hot down the stretch of his year there. His last 10 games, he put up another, 15 points or something more. So he was red hot. But McKenna, I mean, that's what you got to do. Those are the type of performances we're looking for. And it's not like we should be that shocked. He didn't put up an 8-point game in the West. He put up a couple 7-point games, but he has that level in him. We know that he can just take over games with his skill, and that's exactly what he did. And 7 primaries, I believe, in that 8 points. 7 primaries.
Wow.
Yeah. So no passenger points. He was dictating play. And then that overtime winner the next night when they were down, I believe they were down 3 at one point too, to storm all the way back and get the dub. So I loved the Conor McGregor celebration too after the goal, especially with what had happened previously a few weeks ago too, but just showing the personality, being like, hey, I'm here. This is what I'm good at, and I'm going to show my personality a little bit. I loved it. I was over at the WHL Top Prospects, and that's before those 10 points too. And just talking with some teams is that, they like some of the swagger that he'd been showing too. I think that, far be it for me to say that this is now back to being a slam dunk consensus presumptive first overall pick because Ivar Stenberg is still cooking over in Sweden. I think he's got 5 goals
in 6 games.
Yeah, 4 and 6, 5 and 8. He's still moving the needle. So it's not done yet, but I do think Gav has started to put himself right back there as being like, this is the guy.
Well, I was going to ask, is this what the scouting community was waiting for? That if McKenna has a good season and puts up points, he's a slam dunk number 1 overall, no matter what Stenberg does. When we get down to the raw tools and the upside that you've told us about, Cam, does it become a no-brainer if McKenna closes the season strong?
I think so. And at this point, you have to expect he's going to hit 50 points, which is kind of like a really tremendous benchmark to get as a freshman, as a true freshman draft eligible. So he's going to hit that level. I think that if Stenberg isn't having a historic season himself, none of this would really matter. It'd still be like, well, maybe McKenna's not generational or near generational, but he's still the very best in this class. But because Ivar has been so spectacular in the SHL against men in one of the top leagues in the world, he has forced his way into that conversation. But I do think that McKenna can shut the door there with a nice strong finish, with a nice, conference tournament, and maybe we see him in Vegas at the Frozen Four too. Like my dream scenario is that we got Michigan, Michigan State, North Dakota, and Penn State at the Frozen Four. So we get him and Verhoff. We get the Michigan boys there too. That would be a lot of fun. That's probably pie in the sky. But I do think that if he can close this out with a bang, that it should be his.
Fans don't make the selection when it happens, but my goodness, if it is the Vancouver Canucks that have this first choice, I can't help, and not to get too Don Cherry on us here, but I can't help but think that a little bit of nationalism plays into this for the Canucks, in that of their top 10 picks in recent memory, they want a Canadian to cheer on, I think, these days, after watching the Olympics, and especially watching a guy like a Celebrini who, and I'm not saying these players are the same or going to have the same careers, but I think it's the same level of hype. Like Celebrini, Bedard, and McKenna, I think have the same, they're in the same category of hype, even if they're not the same player. But none of them were hyped as Connor McDavid. And I think what people are really clinging on to here, Cam, is that Celebrini was hyped. He was the number one with a bullet in his year. No question about that. But I don't think people thought of him as a Connor McDavid. And I don't think he is Connor McDavid, but just how good he is given the hype. Like, I think he's outperformed even his hype, which was high. And I think people are now hoping, gosh, maybe that'll happen for us with McKenna. Yes, he's hyped, but maybe he'll be Macklin Celebrini.
He won't be, but I do think that there are levels to this game. I do think that, McDavid set the benchmark. I was talking to Bedard's agent just yesterday, and that, Connor Bedard has the most views on elite prospects by like 1 million over McDavid. And that, I think that speaks to a little bit of the evolution of elite prospects in those 8 years between their draft eligible seasons, that the amount of traffic, but also like Bedard was one of the most hyped players. I could argue maybe even more hyped than McDavid coming out of junior, some of the things he was doing. And then Celebrini was a dip down because he had more of a two-way game. Yes, he destroyed it at BU, and he was tremendous with the Chicago Steel the year before that. But, I kind of equated him to like if Sidney Crosby and Jonathan Toews got together and had a baby, that would be Macklin Celebrini. And he's already outkicked that. And then I think McKenna's even a notch below Celebrini as well on the hype train here too. And that's just part of him moving to the NCAA and not really thriving at the same level. But now here we are at the same point pace. So it's a little bit more of a roller coaster. Now, as far as the nationalism thing, I think you're right. I think that the fans would prefer McKenna, but I don't really think it has to do all that much with his birth certificate. I think it's more of that if you want the superstar, you're going to have to take the swing. You're going to have to take the little bit of a risk that he might not be as good of a two-way player as Ivar Stenberg. He might not have as much jam as a kid like Ivar Stenberg, but that he has that upside of being someone who could maybe win an Art Ross one day. Maybe, just maybe. And so that's something that I think Vancouver fans are dying for. You get yourself into a little bit of trouble, I think, when you start to look at passports. They made a mistake. They made a glaring mistake with Jake Virtanen back in 2014. And it was obvious, It was clear as day. And it was, you had a Swede sitting there with Willie Nylander, and you had Nick Ehlers sitting there, but we got to get the big, strong BC boy, the Canadian kid, right? And I think that that's a mistake. I personally, it's like, get rid of the passports. Let's look at the player. Let's look at their talent. Let's look at their upside, and let's make the best pick.
And a Swedish GM complicates that idea for Canucks fans, even if they do want McKenna because of the passport.
That's if he's the GM making the selection in June. And let's face it, to right now, Todd Harvey is a Canadian director of amateur scouting for the Vancouver Canucks. I want to ask this, because you see 1 goal, 7 assists. Needless to say, 7 assists sticks out, Cam. Mm-hmm. Is he more a playmaker, creator off the wing, McKenna, than a finisher? Would it serve him well to play with a shoot-first centerman, finisher centerman going forward?
Yeah, he is definitely more of a playmaker. He's more in that Nikita Kucherov, Patty Kane mold where, he creates everything off the flank. So yes, if you can put him with a shooter down the middle, that's great. Like when Stamkos was the center for Kucherov, right? Like here's my guy who can sure 50 or 60, and here's my playmaker who can put up 100 apples. That is the dream scenario. Not to say that McKenna can't come in and put up 30 goals, I think that that's still attainable for him. He still can shoot it. He has a good release. He's able to get himself into positions to shoot and finish with a one-shot goal scoring, but he definitely is more impactful as a playmaker.
Moving right along, we'll ask you the Yellow Dog poll question today. Move on to some Canucks trade deadline talk. Jake DeBrusk for a first-round pick, Cam. You making that deal even if the first-round pick is in 2026?
I'm making that deal. I'm not sure the other team's making that deal.
You don't think he's worth a first-round pick, even a future first-round pick?
4 years at $5.5 million with that production, with his foot speed, with how streaky he is. I don't know. Like you're going to have to sell a team that's like, this guy is going to be, he's going to be hot for you. Like, he's not Tyler Toffoli, which is what you kind of wanted from him to be. You wanted him to be Tyler Toffoli, where he could score 30 on a regular basis for you and get hot at the right moments and have a little bit of jam in his game. And he's not. He's kind of soft, and he hasn't been clicking. I don't know. I think that would be a tough sell unless it becomes a true seller's market and teams start to panic a little bit and they need pieces. Maybe you can pull out that late first. But I do think that would be a good return for him. I'd make that trade for sure.
Okay, counterpoint. 5.5 is actually pretty cheap for a top six winger going forward in the new cap era. He's a half point per game exactly this year in a desultory season where the Canucks haven't generated a lot of offense. And while he is streaky, he is consistent. Like, you do know that this is a 40, 50-point player year in, year out, despite the streakiness, in a market where you're maybe 5 sellers right now?
I love the enthusiasm. I love the positivity around it. I think that the streakiness on the goal scoring and the 4-year term, if he had 1 year, if this was an expiring contract, or maybe there was 1 year after this, then I think that would be more palatable. But like, if I'm a rival GM or a GM looking to add a piece, I either want to pay a first round pick for someone that I know is going to pop for me, and then his contract's coming off the books, or I need to extend him. Or it's like, I'm getting someone with term that I'm like, this is going to fit into our culture. This is going to fit into our long-term plan in the top 9 for the next 4 years. And I don't know if Jake DeBrusk is going to fit that bill for a lot of contenders. That's all. But I hope so.
Yeah. Which veteran with term on the Canucks do you think is most likely to be traded, or that you would most actively be shopping between now and next Friday?
Yeah, I think those are probably 2 different answers. Because I do think DeBrusk is more likely to move than a guy like Connor Garland, who has the no move about to kick in, has more term left, is going to be 6x6 kicking in too. So if it was me, I'd probably be looking to offload that on a guy who's turning 30, I do believe. But I do think it's probably DeBrusk that just hasn't fit in as well with this organization, where I do think the team really likes Connor Garland. And then, Marcus Pettersson, I keep looking at Marcus Pettersson. It hasn't worked as well as they would have liked. They paid a pretty heavy premium to get him. Could you recoup some of that? Another guy who's got, I believe it's 4 by 5.5 or maybe 5 by 5.5. So again, a team could look at that and be like, that's a top 4 defenseman. That is certainly more valuable than a top 9 winger. If you can sell a team that needs to fill a hole like that on their blue line long term, that I think that you might be able to move him, and that could bring back a first round pick, potentially a late first round picks.
That's not a big number, and you're right. If he's the 4th of your top 4 defensemen for a contending team, that's something to consider. Jonathan Lekkerimaki surgery. How concerned are you? What's your understanding of how this came to pass?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how it came to pass or how long he's been fighting it. It's unfortunate. I put it out there too that sometimes these labrum surgeries, they'll reduce the torque. It kind of reduces the mobility in a player, but oftentimes it won't too. Like, we've seen shooters go down with those shoulder surgeries and be out for 4 months and come back and still have a great release. I believe it was a couple of years ago, Cole Caulfield had a similar surgery. So you hope that he comes back stronger and healthier, but the clock is ticking a little bit. It's starting to tick. We're not at midnight yet, but I do think that and we talked about it last week or the week before, is that he needs to break right for you, or you needed to move off that asset sooner rather than later. And now that potential is gone, right? You're not going to move him at all this summer as he's rehabbing. So now you have to hope that he rehabs well. He comes into camp in good shape, which is, again, it's going to be big when you're missing this much time on the ice and then in training in the offseason, and then he can crack your roster and start to contribute next year, because that's the timeline. Like, he should be on the big club roster next year and starting to figure out ways to contribute on a game-to-game basis. So now I think you probably have to push that back a year. Now you're looking at him at 22, 23, hoping he's starting to figure out. So the clock is ticking. It is an unfortunate thing, but injuries are part of the game. So you just wish him well and hope he gets back sooner rather than later.
If this was nagging, my goodness, he wasn't showing any signs of it. We were talking about the 2-goal game a week and a half ago, where he was ripping the puck. So it seems to come out of nowhere, this decision.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't actually poke around to see if it's something that he has been battling, because I, like you, wouldn't have suspected that just from watching him, or if it was something that just happened and then they're like, surgery time, which, if that was the case, I'm all for that. If you suddenly got injured, it's like, let's just do it right now. This is kind of a lost season already. Let's get you sorted out so that you can have as much time in the offseason to train as possible to be ready for next year.
Cam, we talked about it in our opening segment, but a huge moment of opportunity here for the sport of ice hockey. Coming off the Olympics.
I've noticed that a lot of them have been dropping ice, by the way, in American outlets. They've just been calling it hockey.
Coming off the Olympics, the heated rivalry show. I mean, we're sitting here talking about Gavin McKenna at Penn State. I mean, this is a relatively new program that was started by the Pakulas, the owners of the Buffalo Sabres, not long ago. I mean, there wasn't much to speak of by way of hockey culture in Western Pennsylvania outside of the Penguins. Okay, sure, they developed a few players, Miller, Gibson, Trocheck, but suddenly you have a whole region of that state that is talking hockey. I mean, you've been down to Arizona State. They've lost their NHL team, but you've got a burgeoning D1 program in the Sun Belt there. They even did 3,000 plus in attendance for Alabama hockey last night, Blake, down in SEC football country.
Wow.
We're sitting here going, wow, is hockey ready for liftoff after all these years in the United States? How would you size up the marketing and commercial opportunities for the sport on a heater right now south of the line?
Yeah, I mean, you strike while the iron's hot, because right now, and especially with the Americans winning it, those are the type of things that really start to generate more, youth signing up for it, right? Like you need more kids playing youth hockey in the States for it to continue to build, because those kids are going to grow up to be fans, even if they don't grow up to be Olympians, right? You need that grassroots push up. So the fact that the Americans won it, I think, has probably created a whole new set of fans. Like you said, heated rivalry has grabbed the attention of a whole massive demographic of people watching that show. What we do fall into this trap a little bit is that every 4 years or every 12 years or whenever the Americans or the NHLers are at the Olympics, is that there is this just huge swell of attention, and Americans are right into it, and then it just kind of fades away, and you lose that momentum. So I hope it does continue to build, and I hope that the NHL, and I hope that grassroots program and USA Hockey and everyone just tries to really lean on that and lift itself up. And we see that in 10 years, maybe it's pushing up, right? Maybe it's not just the fourth or fifth sport, if you want to talk college football or even college basketball, that's ahead of hockey in the States, that it's right up there, kind of, it's never going to be with football and baseball, I don't think. But could it push up into basketball territory? Maybe one day. I think that's the hope anyways.
And the World Cup is coming in 2 years, and I think it benefits now from the U.S. winning, in that it becomes a bit of a rubber match, and it's going to be an ongoing series between Canada and the U.S. going forward. But if Canada and the U.S. face with anything on the line in the World Cup, that's a rubber match sort of game. And people are starting to put together rosters, not so much for the World Cup, but for the 2030 Olympics. And that's also been an interesting exercise as we prognosticate there. Can Gavin McKenna be a part of that? And obviously Connor Bedard sliding in, Matthew Schaefer for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Well, the name that I'm curious about, Landon Dupont, is he a possibility? Can he be good enough in 4 years to be representing Canada?
He could be good enough. He could be good enough. I was sitting next to a scout at that Top Prospects game, and he was convincing me that Landon Dupont could be playing in the NHL right now. Like the kid is very, very talented, and so at his age, we give it 4 years. You look at that blue line. You look at, here, nice. You got a prediction up there right now. I look at that blue line, and the only two guys that I think Makar's the only lock to come back. Like probably Thomas Harley, but I don't know. We'll see what happens in 4 years. So there is all sorts of space on that blue line for turnover. So I hope a kid like Landon Dupont can. And then you look up front. Yeah, you mentioned Bedard, Wyatt Johnston, Beckett Seneca, right? Dylan Gunther, Adam Fantilli, those type, Logan Stankoven. And then could Maddox Schultz, the 15-year-old turning 16-year-old? Is there a world where we see a 19-year-old kick in like we did with Celebrini? Liam Pugh, another 15. There's that youngsters coming. Not so much for the Americans. So I think that the U.S. winning this year was excellent for hockey. Terrible for me personally and the Canadians here. We had to have heartbreak. That sucked. But I think generally really good for hockey, and especially moving into that World Cup, because I do think in 2030 they're going to be up against it a little bit more. With the Canadians are going to be younger, more skilled, and faster, I think. And then moving forward, I think that gap's only going to widen unless we see a real resurgence of some of these young American prospects that we haven't seen in a few years now. So I'd love a rubber match in 28. I'd love a rematch in 2030, get it back in Canada here. But yeah, like I said, I think Team USA winning it, and also all that Johnny Hockey stuff, getting the Goodrow jersey out, getting the kids out there for the picture, that was, worth it for them to win it alone too.
Yep. No, classy move by Werenski. Tkachuk and Austin Matthews skating that jersey around and showing the love to Johnny Goodrow. Okay, buddy, great hit. Thanks for the time. Catch up next week. Be deadline week. Big haps.
Be looking forward to it.